Have you ever wondered what the great Stoics did in their spare time? People whose philosophy has survived millennia. People whose ideas changed the very essence of how we see ourselves and our world. And no matter who they were, emperors, philosophers, or slaves, they had a common goal: to maintain peace of mind, to remain resilient in the face of hardship, and to gain wisdom. And in this video, we'll break down 5 things the Stoics did to keep their spirit and willpower strong in any circumstance. Each of these practices is not just an activity, but the key to a life of meaning and awareness. And who knows, maybe it was these practices that allowed the Stoics to withstand any challenge, to gain the confidence that still helps millions of people today to find peace in a turbulent world. We are often looking for answers to questions: how to find happiness, how do I learn to manage my emotions, how to be successful without losing your inner balance. The Stoics knew that the world would not always be gracious. They knew that success does not come by chance, and yet they found a way to remain themselves without losing themselves in the turmoil of life. It was their special art, an art they honed in every spare moment. But what exactly did they do when the daily cares and battles left them to themselves? What occupied their thoughts when there was only silence in front of them, full of possibilities? The answers to these questions will surprise you. You will not find here recipes for success from modern books on self-development, but you will discover the principles that have been tested for thousands of years, which will always be relevant. Principles that carried the philosophy of the Stoics from ancient Rome to our time, and perhaps they will become part of your life. They pondered over the meaning of each day they lived. They searched for truth and meaning in words that could easily be missed in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. They observed their thoughts and emotions, learning to understand themselves. And now, today you have a unique opportunity to touch these practices, to understand their essence, and perhaps see the world through different eyes. We will break down these 5 practices of the Stoics that have become a true source of strength and resilience. We will dive into the past to extract knowledge that is still relevant today. Are you ready? Then join us. The path to wisdom and harmony lies ahead of you. 1. Reflection on the day lived. In the quiet of the evening, when the hustle and bustle fades into the background, the Stoics performed their most important ritual: the analysis of the day. Every evening they sat down in solitude to mentally revisit the events that were already behind them. They did not seek self-abuse or praise, but sought something more: the opportunity to see the truth. The Stoics realized that each day carried a lesson, and their ability to learn it would determine how much stronger and wiser they would be tomorrow. This practice was not just a summing up, it was a deep self-discovery, much like communicating with oneself. As a student communicates with a teacher, so the Stoics communicated with themselves, with their conscience and mind. For them, this evening ritual was something sacred, a reminder that each day was a new page in their lives, and every act mattered. No matter what happened during the day, the Stoics always knew that their strength lay in their ability to look at themselves honestly and soberly. Perhaps you know the feeling when you lie in bed in the evening, and thoughts of the past day begin to swarm in your head. One thing is remembered with joy, another with annoyance. But the Stoics did not let these thoughts just appear and disappear. They gave themselves time to think about each moment. What exactly did I do right today? Where could I have done better? What can I learn from this situation? Such questions for the Stoics were not just reflections. It was a real meeting with themselves. Reflecting on the day helped them not only to reflect on their actions, but also to understand how their decisions affected their inner world. This is how they learned to control their emotions, to notice weaknesses and find the strength to change. And this ritual each time reminded the Stoics of one simple truth: the truth that today can always be better than yesterday. We cannot go back in time and correct our mistakes, but we can honestly admit them. This was the wisdom of the Stoics: to look at themselves from the outside, without excessive criticism, but also without excessive self-glorification. For them, each day was a lesson, and each evening an opportunity to summarize its results and move on with a clear mind and an open heart. For example, Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, wrote many times in his diaries about the importance of daily introspection. In his reflections, he pointed to the power of honesty and awareness. For him, this evening ritual was an opportunity not only to control his rule, but also to maintain inner balance. The daily questions he asked himself helped him to stay on track. despite all the difficulties and temptations that accompanied his life as the ruler of a vast empire. One of the key principles of Stoicism is mindfulness. We often live day to day without thinking about where our actions, our words, and our thoughts are directed. The Stoics, however, knew that each day was a chance to become wiser, and so they never missed an opportunity to look outside themselves. Each evening, setting aside just a few minutes, they created a space for reflection and awareness. When a Stoic reflected on the past day, he was not looking for joy or sadness. It was pure awareness, the willingness to accept what was and move forward. After all, the Stoics believed that it is in the awareness of their actions, thoughts, and aspirations we gain control over ourselves. And this control, not to become perfect, but to become better, preserving peace of mind and inner harmony. For the Stoics, there were no trifles in life. Even the simplest day could become a source of wisdom, if only to approach it with an open heart. And no matter how the day passed, successfully or not so successfully, the Stoic always found time to reflect on it, to see what he can learn. This is how they step by step built their inner world. Not in a hurry, but constantly developing. Reflecting on the day, the Stoics did not just think about their actions, but also tried to understand how they affected their surroundings. After all, a Stoic always remembered that his actions affected not only himself, but also those around him. This was their way of maintaining humanity and respect for everyone with whom they interacted. The awareness they brought to their evening ritual was their way of finding harmony not only with themselves, but also with the world around them. Reflecting on the day is not a simple practice. It requires honesty and the willingness to admit one's mistakes. But it is this honesty, according to the Stoics, that makes a person strong. It helps one not just to go through life, but to learn, to become better and more aware. So when a Stoic sat down in silence to reflect on the day, he did it with clarity and calmness. He was not looking for excuses or praise. He was looking for understanding. And this search for understanding made him every day a little closer to the wisdom he valued so much. This was their way, step by step, day by day, to move towards greater awareness of themselves and the world. Maybe you too can find inspiration in this practice. Try to find a few minutes in the evening before you go to bed to ask yourself simple questions. What did I do well today? Where can I improve myself? What could I do to please the person who meets me tomorrow? These questions, if asked honestly and consciously, can be the beginning of a great journey. A journey that begins with simple awareness and gradually leads to the wisdom that the Stoics sought. 2. Reading and the study of wisdom. For the Stoics, reading was much more than just a pastime. They saw books and scrolls as sources of wisdom, as guiding stars to guide them and help them grow. Reading opened up to them the opportunity to learn from those who had already found answers to the most difficult questions. Some, like Marcus Aurelius, found time to read in brief moments of rest, even in the midst of government business. Some, like Epictetus, read to find comfort and fortitude despite life's difficulties. For each of them, reading became the bridge that connected them to the wisdom of ancient thinkers and philosophers. In a world where many people have access to information, but few seek true wisdom, the Stoics stood out for their attitude to reading. It was their way of learning, comprehension, spiritual growth. They understood that one right word can change a life, and one thought can become the basis of a whole philosophy. Because for a Stoic, every paragraph, every line carried not just information, but the experience and experiences of authors who had already passed their paths and were ready to share their legacy. When reading, the Stoics paid attention to what affected them. They read the lines not for pleasure, but for deep understanding. Reading became their personal meditation, their path to self-discovery and understanding of the world. This was their special approach, their special way to grow, even while remaining in place. After all, as Seneca said, without a book, wisdom will never come. Reading for the Stoics was not only a source of knowledge, but also a way of training the mind and spirit. It was a process that allowed them to develop the capacity for introspection and deep reflection on life. For example, Marcus Aurelius did not just read, but wrote down his thoughts, recorded key ideas, made notes in his diary, which would later become his famous book Alone with Myself. This book is not just a collection of philosophical reflections, but also evidence of his persistence in the search for wisdom. Each recorded thought became for him a stepping stone on the path to self-discovery. We can see this attitude to reading in Epictetus. As a slave and later as a philosopher, he had no wealth and power, but had a desire for truth. For him, books became the tools that strengthened his fortitude. Epictetus read in order to find answers to eternal questions: how to gain fortitude, how to resist hardship, how to remain inwardly free, even when in bondage. These questions and answers he found in the pages of books helped him to strengthen his Stoic worldview and develop clarity of thought. Reading was for the Stoics an act of enrichment. It was food for their souls, their minds, their inner world. When they read, they discovered not just words, but whole worlds. For them, reading was a journey on which they learned about distant horizons as well as themselves. For the Stoics, reading was a conscious and concentrated process. They did not seek to swallow as much information as possible or superficially familiarize themselves with the text in order to feel educated. On the contrary, they read slowly, thoughtfully, as if they were absorbing every thought and letting it resound within themselves. They looked for depth, meaning, and answers to the main questions of existence in books, not just facts. This practice distinguished the Stoics from those who absorbed knowledge without purpose and without understanding. For the Stoic, each line of reading became part of his own thinking. They did not seek to possess knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It was important to them that this knowledge transformed them, became an inner support, and helped to strengthen the resilience and inner peace. Because for the Stoic, knowledge, which he cannot use in a difficult moment, it is only unnecessary weight. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoics, wrote that by reading we not only learn, but also learn to live. Reading was for him and his followers an act of gaining wisdom, a way to immerse themselves in the reflections that guided their lives. They knew not to read everything. On the contrary, they chose books that could bring out the best in a person. When the Stoics picked up a book, they were not looking for temporary comfort, but for a solid foundation for inner transformation. These were books about virtue, about human nature, about finding meaning in the most ordinary and the most difficult moments of life. After all, the Stoics realized that knowledge that is not put into practice loses its value. It was important for them not only to learn what courage, fortitude, or humility is, but also to embody these principles in everyday life. For example, Marcus Aurelius, in his diaries, repeatedly returned to the ideas he had read in order to strengthen himself and not give in to doubt. In his life of political intrigue and wars, these ideas became an anchor that helped him to remain steadfast and wise even in moments of the greatest trials. He read the works of philosophers who taught him humility and the realization that the world and the people around him were changing, and all he could do was to strive for perfection within himself. Seneca told his students, "Read in order to change yourself." He knew that true reading requires effort, attention, and an open heart. When one really delves into a text, it is as if one enters into a dialogue with its author. This dialogue enriches, develops, and allows one to look at oneself from the outside. For Seneca, reading was an opportunity to reflect on life, because each book became a mirror for him in which he could see his strengths and weaknesses. By reading, the Stoics raised questions about the nature of good and evil, about what true happiness is, and how one can find inner peace that does not depend on external circumstances. For them, books were not a luxury, but a necessity. The texts of sages and philosophers, which were passed down from generation to generation, became a guide to those truths that cannot be found in everyday life, unless you are willing to search for them consciously. 3. Physical exercise is the foundation of health and strength of mind. Physical exercise played an important role in the lives of the Stoics because they understood that the health of body and mind were interrelated. The Stoics believed that physical activity strengthened not only the body but also the mind, developing discipline and fortitude. In this context, exercise became not just a way of keeping fit, but also an important aspect of their philosophy. For the Stoics, the health of the body was essential for accomplishing life's tasks and achieving high goals. Epictetus taught that the first thing we must do is to take care of our bodies, for physical condition directly affects one's ability to make decisions and act with wisdom. When the body is strong and healthy, the mind is clearer and the spirit is stronger. In this context, physical activity was not just a preference but a necessity for Stoics striving for self-improvement. Physical exercise required discipline and regularity on the part of the Stoics. They understood that effort was necessary to achieve results, and this reflected their philosophical approach to life. In exercise, they sought not only physical strength, but also an inner control that would help them overcome difficulties and remain steadfast in all circumstances. It was a practice that shaped their character, hardening their spirit and cultivating in them the ability to endure difficulties with courage and humility. The Stoics understood that the spirit and the body were inextricably linked. Physical exercise helped them develop not only physical strength, but also mental fortitude. When they were physically active, they felt more energetic and confident, which in turn strengthened their inner strength. This relationship between body and spirit became the foundation of Stoic philosophy, which was based on the fact that man should take care of himself in all aspects of his life. As Seneca said, "Do not allow your mind to be corrupted, and care for your body as responsibly as you care for your soul." Physical activity also served as a way for the Stoics to learn how to overcome difficulties. In the process of exercising, they faced illness, fatigue, and various obstacles. These trials taught them patience and perseverance, for each time they overcame difficulties in sports, they strengthened their inner resources. This experience allowed them to face the difficulties of life with more confidence, knowing that they were capable of overcoming any challenge if they were not afraid of sweat and effort. The Stoics also taught that it was important to maintain balance in life by incorporating physical activity into one's routine. This meant that exercise should be combined with a sensible approach to rest and recovery. Seneca emphasized that overexertion could be just as harmful as lack of activity. Listening to one's body and finding harmony between work and rest became an important aspect of Stoic practice. This allowed the Stoics to avoid extremes and to maintain mental clarity even in the most stressful moments. The physical practices of the Stoics ranged from simple outdoor walks to more intense sports, such as wrestling, boxing, or running. Many Stoics practiced gymnastics, which not only developed the body but also helped improve the mood and state of mind. They strove to make exercise not only beneficial but also enjoyable, which allowed them to find joy and fulfillment in physical activity. Thus, exercise for the Stoics was not just a hobby or a routine duty, but a way of life. They realized that taking care of their bodies was not only a way to stay healthy, but also an important part of their philosophy. Through physical activity, they found not only physical strength, but also mental fortitude to cope with all of life's difficulties. Physical exercise became a symbol of their commitment to self-development, virtue, and inner harmony, allowing them to live full and meaningful lives. In this way, the Stoics teach us the importance of harmony between body and spirit, reminding us that taking care of our health is not just a duty, but a path to true freedom and resilience. This practice, based on physical activity, remains relevant today, inspiring people all over the world to strive for the best and to live according to the high principles followed by the great philosophers of antiquity. 4. Observing nature. The Stoics valued nature not only for its beauty, but also for the profound wisdom it contained. In every flower, every stone, in the movement of the waves and the changing of the seasons, they found lessons of resilience, humility, and steadfastness in the face of adversity. In the very essence of nature, the Stoics saw a reflection of their main principles: everything is constantly changing. But within these changes there is a certain order that is not disturbed by external events. When the Stoics observed nature, they saw in it examples that could be applied to their own lives. They learned from trees that stand firmly in the ground and withstand any storm. They admired rivers that continue on their way, avoiding obstacles and not trying to destroy them. Nature was not just a place for recreation for them. It was a great teacher who reminded them every day of the importance of patience, harmony, and the ability to adapt. Nature also reminded the Stoics of the frailty of life. They saw how flowers bloom and fade, how the seasons change, how animals age and die. In this cyclical nature, the Stoics found comfort and wisdom. As they looked at nature, they realized that their lives were also subject to this same great cycle, and that they had to come to terms with it. The Stoics realized that nature acts without unnecessary words and emotions, that its every movement is filled with meaning and natural simplicity. They saw how rivers flow despite obstacles, how birds fly south without questioning the future, how the sun rises and sets day after day, always doing its duty. In this orderly rhythm of nature, they found examples for their own lives. Like nature, the Stoics strove to live in harmony with themselves, to follow their own path, allowing neither doubts nor fears to lead them astray. Observing nature, the Stoics learned to accept the inevitable. In their eyes, every living thing fulfilled its purpose, following the natural order of things. When the leaves fell from the trees in the fall, they did not regret the summer. When a river met a rock on its way, it did not fight it, but simply flowed around it, finding a new path. The Stoics realized that resisting the inevitable was only a source of unnecessary suffering. They tried to carry this wisdom into their daily lives, finding the strength and humility that nature gave them. Nature also reminded the Stoics that everything is interconnected. Each being, each element, does not exist for its own sake, but as part of a vast, harmonious system. The tree produces fruit that nourishes the animals. The rain moistens the earth, allowing plants to grow. The sun warms the world, sustaining life. The Stoics saw in this an order that we are not always able to understand, but to which we can aspire. Observing this natural harmony, the Stoics realized that human beings are part of a greater whole, and they too do not exist only for their own sake. They believe that everyone has his or her own role, his or her own contribution to the overall order of things, just as each star in the sky shines, complementing the radiance of the others. This realization helped the Stoics to remain humble and to serve others without expecting gratitude or glory, because each of their actions was a contribution to the harmony around them. For the Stoics, nature was a source of invaluable lessons about impermanence. They observed the changing seasons, the birth and death of flowers, the changing of the sun at night, and accepted these changes with deep understanding. They realized that every moment passes, that nothing in life is eternal, and this encouraged them to appreciate every second, to find joy even in simple things, because they could be fleeting. This closeness to nature taught them the art of letting go. Like a river does not linger on stones, the Stoics learned not to cling to the past and not to fear the future, but to live in the present, finding tranquility and wisdom in their journey. 5. The simple enjoyment of silence and solitude. For the Stoics, silence and solitude were not just states, but times for deep reflection, moments for finding inner peace and self-discovery. In a world full of cares, noises, and constant distractions, the Stoics found strength and inspiration in solitude, which would allow them to better understand themselves, their values, and their goals. They retreated into silence, not because they wanted to escape from the world, but to find stability and to prepare themselves for life in the world. Silence for the Stoics was not an emptiness, but a space where the real life of their spirit was revealed. In this silence, they could listen to their thoughts, understand their hidden fears and desires, see themselves for who they were. In moments of solitude, when the outside world remained beyond their attention, the Stoics looked inward. This time allowed them to connect with their essence, to remind themselves of the principles and goals that guide their path, regardless of external circumstances. The solitude they sought was not an escape. It became a practice of strengthening the mind and spirit, allowing the Stoic to better understand the nature of things and his role in the world. For, as Seneca said, only when we are alone with ourselves do we become real. The Stoics sought in silence the tranquility that was the source of their strength. They knew that in the noise of the outside world it was easy to lose oneself, to be carried away by momentary desires and distractions, forgetting what was really important. In solitude, however, they could return to their thoughts, strengthen their minds, and renew their desire for virtue. For the Stoics, silence and solitude were the moments when they could freely explore their souls and free themselves from the influence of external opinions and expectations. Marcus Aurelius, as emperor, often found time for solitude, despite his great responsibility to the people. In his diary, he wrote that solitude was an opportunity to learn the truth about yourself and carry it with you wherever you were. His philosophy taught not to neglect socializing, but to strive to find peace in oneself. This ability to remain unperturbed and focused on his own principles became one of the main traits of his character and an example for the followers of Stoicism. In solitude, the Stoics sought not only clarity but also liberation from attachments. For they believed that a person who is able to be happy alone with himself is truly free. Solitude for them was a way to test oneself. If one suffers when alone, it means that one has not yet found inner harmony. The Stoics saw solitude as an opportunity to strengthen the independence of their spirit. They knew that if you can be at peace when you are alone with yourself, then you are not dependent on external circumstances, public opinion, or casual pleasures. They considered this art of being content with your own presence to be one of the most valuable skills. After all, in solitude a person can realize that true happiness comes from within, not from the outside world, and that the only reliable source of peace is his own mind. Epictetus often reminded his students that the fear of solitude is only a reflection of the inner emptiness that many try to fill with external distractions. The Stoic, however, learned to find support in himself, and this support became stronger through the practice of solitude and reflection. For the Stoic, solitude was not a punishment, but a blessing, because it allowed him to test his resilience, understand his weaknesses, and learn to be self-sufficient without needing the approval or support of others. In such moments of silence and reflection, the Stoics sought answers to the main questions they asked themselves over and over again. What is really important in my life? What can I influence and what do I need to let go of? How can I be better than I was yesterday? In this honest conversation with themselves, they strengthened their resolve and found the path to true freedom. Freedom from external attachments and fleeting desires. Solitude for the Stoics was a time when they could look at their lives without illusions and distractions. In deep silence, they asked themselves the hard questions that are rarely asked in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. They reflected on their own actions, evaluating whether their words and deeds were consistent with their principles. The Stoics knew that a meaningful life requires not external approval, but inner honesty. In solitude, they found this honesty by shedding the masks we sometimes wear for the sake of others. In such moments, Marcus Aurelius found solace in simple contemplation and reflection on his place in the universe. He saw how everyone's life, including his own, is but a single moment in the flow of time. This realization filled him with peace, reminding him that everything is transitory and that to waste his time worrying is to miss the opportunity to live a life worth living. In solitude, Mark reminded himself that each day could be his last, and this motivated him to modesty, sincerity, and compassion. Now you know what practices were the basis for the great Stoics, how they used their time, how they sought wisdom and found balance, despite all the difficulties and challenges that came their way. And these seemingly simple activities, reading, reflecting, observing ourselves, letting go, and being grateful, are still relevant today, because just as then, we are still searching for answers. We are still striving to be better, to find peace amidst the storms that often rage not only around us, but also within us. Think about it. Which of these practices can you apply to your life? What would Marcus Aurelius do if he were in your shoes? These questions are the first steps toward the self-awareness and harmony that the Stoics talked so much about. You don't have to change everything at once. Sometimes even a small step in the right direction opens the door to huge changes. So why not give it a try? Try incorporating something from Stoic practices into your daily routine. Try giving yourself time to reflect, to just be with yourself, observing your thoughts and feelings. Read a book that challenges you with questions that aren't easily answered. Know how to let go of things that don't benefit you. And learn to appreciate what you have while it's with you. If you like this path and want to learn more, if you are seeking to become stronger in spirit and find peace of mind, subscribe to our channel. Here we talk not just about philosophy, but how to use it to achieve real inner strength and clarity. Give us a like if the idea of Stoicism is close to you. Write comments, share your thoughts, ask questions. We are here to grow together. Together, discover the way to yourself, the way to live consciously and with meaning. Thank you for watching the video to the end. May every day be a step towards the best. And remember, no matter what happens, no matter how life turns out, you can always remain resilient, because strength, wisdom, and peace of mind are always within you.